That's gonna die, so. Mission 1, I'm gonna put this on. Hope y'all enjoyed that. Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sci under the Believe Podcast Network. It is indeed a podcast about Black science fiction, Black fantasy, and staying on the same page in our marriage. Today for episode 101, that's Wildisha. Hey, Wild. Today for episode 101, we watched Bones, starring Snoop Dogg, directed by Ernest Dickerson. He used to come on BET all of the time. And so Ben had never seen it before, and I hadn't seen it in a couple years, so we decided to watch that. Black director, Black horror. But before we get into the show, how you doing, baby?
Ooh, yeah, I'm doing fantastic. I'm running off of this wonderful Worldcon weekend where I met lots of great authors and lots of wonderful people. Yeah, it's been...
I'm sure they all asked, like, where's Amber? Where's the baby? Where's the best part of you?
The people who knew me or followed us were curious about you. They were more interested in learning about you than me, obviously, because you're the rock star. I am, and I'm just the rock. I'm the foundation which you are built. You built on me. On this rock you shall stand.
Right, Rock of Ages.
I'm your...
Rocky and Bullwinkle. You know, you really, I was talking to you this morning about how you really are like the Roger Rabbit to my Eddie Valiant. Like you're just goofy enough and just annoying enough, but Eddie like needs Roger.
Yeah.
It's like I take myself too seriously. Right? I can't, you see my head because I'm trying to look at you and talking to this mic. Maybe I should move it a little bit closer to me. Check us out, y'all. We got podcast arms. If you're watching this on YouTube, whenever we get it on the YouTube.
You should actually start creating content where we're sitting across from each other. That actually makes more sense, right?
That would make more sense if we had multiple camera angles, which we do, but it's hard. Should we change these angles right now? No. One day we will like get our crap together. Also, we're currently moving, so when we have a bigger house, a bigger space, things will come together. But for right now, we're on our couch making this podcast, and you can too. Before we get into today's movie, because I promise you we will be talking about that movie, we want to just give a quick shout out to all you patrons out there. If you are a patron, if you support us with your dollars, honey boo boo, a dollar make me holla. It's, $1, $2, $5 a month. We really appreciate that support. You know, we're new parents, we're full-time content creators, so we really love some of the following people right here. We got Abby Forbes, Lakina Sutton-Moore, Kristen Shoresman, Doria Cruz, Sherelle, Haley, Anaya, and Elaine. We're slowly getting through all of our amazing patrons.
It doesn't end.
Oh, Rosie Moan. We love you, Rosie Moan. Meg McGuire, Tanya Alvins, Nola, Ashley, Miss Jules, Carice, and Heather. We really appreciate all of y'all's support so we can keep
Rosie,
making damn.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
But you got excited about... Rosie was... my teacher.
Yes, at The Annoyance.
At The Annoyance.
Shout out to The Annoyance.
Thank you. Awesome. The teacher supporting the student.
We're rusty as hell. Can I finish a sentence?
I'm so sorry.
Rosie was your teacher at The Annoyance. What did you take?
I took improv, I think 4 or 3. I think it was improv 3. Yeah.
Did you have a good time in the class?
Yeah, you bought it for me as a gift. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate it.
I guess it's kind of shady because it's like you need help on your comedy. Here's the gift. Did you feel like you improved? I don't.
Then that's all that really matters, though. Sorry for interrupting you. We are rusty.
I interrupt you all the time. We are rusty, but guess what? We respect each other in this house. We love each other. This podcast, truly, like we said on the last episode, it taught us that we talk over each other a lot. So we're both works in progress, yes?
Which is a TV show that a bunch of actually Annoyance kids have been on. Yeah.
Let's not talk about it because I actually auditioned for that.
And you didn't get it.
And I didn't get it. And please do not troll their
show. No, it's a great TV show. It's a really good TV show.
I wasn't good enough.
Yeah. In the same way that I wasn't good enough for you, despite improv 1, improv 2, improv 3 taken at The Annoyance. I need to take improv 4, but that won't happen because we're moving. Boo.
We can continue taking classes and perfecting our craft. But yeah, I think
Not at The
comedy...
We'll have to be in LA somewhere.
Comedy and podcasting will continue to drive this marriage. Ben, you found something really special out there in those Apple Podcast streets. So why don't you share with me? Because I haven't read it yet. You told me not to read it.
I did tell you not to read it. I think that you should read it.
But you saw this on Apple Podcast reviews,
I
right?
saw this on Apple Podcast reviews, and I was so excited. And actually, instead of doing a check-in, but we did do a check-in, I just wanted to talk about this review because it was so fantastic. So go ahead, read, and don't cry.
Okay. The subject line is keep on going, 5 stars. Hey, Amber and Ben, my name is Ayana, and I'm a 23-year-old black girl from LA. I saw both of you this past Sunday in LA casually walking. My mom and I said hi and how much we love you guys, but we didn't want to stop and intrude on y'all Sunday. But I really felt the need to tell you guys how much of an influence the podcast had on me in just a couple of months since I subscribed. Bless you out. Being a youngish 20-something, wait, you moving it, lost me. Being a youngish 20-something black girl who isn't always sure of herself, but knows she loves all things sci-fi, reading, yoga, sports, and fashion, we get the point. It can be lonely. It's so easy feeling like I'm an anomaly. It's only me. And my experience is not like other black girls, which I know, which of course is not true. But Amber is so refreshing and reassuring seeing a black woman, someone who looks like me and the women in my family. Nope. Reassuring seeing a black woman, women in my family being unapologetically your truest self. Watching you be vocally vulnerable, whether that is you expressing your frustration in a situation or your love for Ben and Wild, even your willingness to ask, what does that word mean, has changed my perception of performing blackness as a woman. As black women, I think we tend to navigate this world with a defensive outlook on life. Did I sound uneducated saying that? I'm not going to ask for clarification. Did I come off too angry? Am I not black enough? Am I too black? But you constantly reassure me that blackness is not a performance, but a part of my identity, which is infinite. Oh my God. By no means are you required to be anyone's role model, but I'm glad that you have a platform where other black girls can see you be you. Enough about the personal impact you've had on me. The Side by Side podcast has gotten me to read and watch so many books and movies that I would never stumble upon on my own. And of course, both of your uplifting black works. I love listening to both of your perspectives. Whether you both agree or disagree, there's always a thought-provoking and fun conversations between the two of you. Keep doing what you guys are doing. Ayana from Apple Podcasts. Fuck me. Ayana, that was so beautiful. And I just want to, I know, Ben, she likes you too, I'm sure. But I always want to just always be authentically myself. And I'm so glad that is being well received by the vast majority of people. I know a lot of people hate me too, but
for a good reason.
I do cry a lot, and I am very extra, and I am hard on myself, and I'm hard on my family, but I am ultimately just like a weirdo, and I'm very happy about this. Why did you tell me that was gonna be that good?
So we ran into Ayana when we were in Culver City.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and it was so cool because we were walking and we could see Ayana like whispering to her mom, like, "Oh wait," and then
which is so strange for me. I'm like
you can come up and talk to us anytime.
Big hairy bitch, yeah. it's just the beast.
But literally, this is exactly what we hope the podcast is doing, that people are discovering new authors or revisiting old works, and that we're just keeping stories that have been told alive and keeping new stories to keep growing. So
yeah, we're just the messengers. Like, we didn't even do the hardest part.
Yeah, we didn't.
I was talking to Ben this weekend, like, not to put you on blast, but Ben was giving all of these authors like some tips on how to like do things on social media and promote their work and stuff like that. And in my brain, I was like, well, the hardest part is just writing the book. Like, I could never give an author advice on spreading the word, but it's so important to like create something wonderful and then tell people that you created something wonderful and advocate for yourself and brag about yourself. Like, that's a battle as well.
Yeah. So to be fair, one of them asked me what advice when it comes to advertising and social media, and that's when I talked about it. But it was quite fascinating to talk to authors who are award-winning authors and who a little bit uncomfortable sharing their work and telling people about their work and advertising, and to not sound annoying or too constant. And so I just shared a little bit about how Amber and I advertise things that we're doing that are not in a preachy kind of way. And it was cool to
I'm
be
sure
able...
we still have preached before.
Oh, sure, yeah. And it was cool to see that me, who is not an author, that could actually do some good and be some support, because I was sort of fanning and, you know, fanboying with certain authors. And it was really... I was flabbergasted when some of these authors recognized who I was or knew your work. And that was very incredible for me, and also humbling for me in a way, because I see these authors as people doing the real work. But at the same time, some of these authors see me as someone who is also doing really great work. For example, and Ayana, I think, just hit the nail on the head, put the dress on the mannequin.
Put the dress.
You really put the dress on the mannequin.
You really dressed that mannequin to the nines.
Because I hit the nail on the head sounds a little bit too violent. But
yeah, but it has to be done to get the job done.
You're right. Yeah.
Obviously, I would advocate for violence.
But I think it's better to start saying you really put the dress on the mannequin with that one, if they really get the idea correctly.
Maybe I don't know. I think it's very. There's just so much good on the internet, and I know it's a horrible place, but if you are a creator and you're doing something powerful, like, I just cannot stress enough that you should share what you're doing. Because I remember when that black man was in the news for bird watching, and like that horrible lady called the cops. Why his name is y'all will tell me his name again.
Sadly, I think he wrote a comic book as well.
Sadly, I only remember Amy Cooper, the white lady that called the cops on him. But I remember hearing that story, and I was like, oh shit, black people go birding? Like that was my great takeaway from this horrible thing that happened. And obviously people dragged her, and I think she even ended up losing her dog because she was just so much. Christian Cooper is his name. Who's Amy Cooper? She's a bad person. I don't know. Are both of their last names Cooper?
I don't know.
I don't care. The other person's name is not important. I just know that I remember hearing that story, and I was like, black people, we literally do everything. And sadly, it takes somebody calling the cops on us for me to find out on the other end of the world. But at the end of the day, like, there is a black person that does everything, or just as many things and more things as white people. So if you are somebody who thinks like, I'm a weirdo, what do you want? Here. If you're somebody who thinks like, I'm truly a weirdo because I'm a black person into jujitsu or skydiving, it's like, I promise you, you're not. So please share that experience to encourage the rest of us to like travel and jump out of planes. Why don't you start talking about the book? Because, you know, the movie, because we got a screamer. We got a stage 4 screamer over here.
Screamer. Oh my goodness. So we watched the film Bones, and short summary, back in 1979, a neighborhood pimp by the name of Jimmy Bones is running the neighborhood and loving the neighborhood and caring for the neighborhood. And then he is murdered because he refuses to sell crack in his neighborhood. He is murdered by 3 men, and his body is buried in his home. And now he has decided to come back to haunt 4 kids who are trying to buy his home and create essentially a club. And
they fully bought it.
They fully bought it. So there is lots of wonderful things about this film. One of my favorite things is that there are maggots. There's a wonderful scene of maggots.
Yes, what was the maggot budget?
And yeah, the maggot budget on this was quite high. What were some things that you were like, whoa, that stuck out to you? Because I was stuck out by maggots on pizza at one point on opening night. Maggots, I mean, I guess pretty soon, essentially, we're all going to have to be eating bugs to make sure that our environment is healthy so that we can stop domesticating cows. Like, we'll have to eat more bug
Which
food.
I'm actually okay with. I really am the kind of person that's like, as long as it's seasoned well and done well, like, I'm into it. Like, you know, I love anchovies on pizza, and you're always like, this is disgusting. Why would you like this? But like, you don't understand, like, the saltiness, like chemically, something about anchovies on pizza really works for me. So I would totally eat a cricket that was like covered in barbecue.
So what was the snails that we just ate, the French?
Oh, the escargot.
Yeah, I've never had escargot recently, so I'm cool with eating bugs. I could definitely do eating bugs.
Yeah, just season it.
Season it, for sure. So that's something that really stuck out to me. There's a great Maggots show up. Fantastic.
Maggots. I think you said baguettes.
Baggins?
Like baguettes.
Baguettes. Oh, yeah. Baggets showed up as well. Wait a minute. She is wild as
Wild's grabbing my mic if you're listening to this.
So, yeah, what's something that stuck out to you?
I just love that, and maybe this is a problem with me, but Snoop Dogg is this like quintessential beloved like rapper pimp persona. And at the end of the day, like, a pimp is somebody who traffics women. But for some reason, he's like an ethical pimp.
Yeah.
He's like, you're not going to sell drugs in my neighborhood. Like, I only traffic women. Like,
yeah.
Drugs, not okay. People, go for it. But again, like, Snoop Dogg has always just been a pimp-esque figure. Like, you actually don't see the women or the violence or the poverty that surrounds, I guess, that profession. But in this movie, he's truly like going door to door and giving people money. He's like a black Christmas pimp. Like, he's giving toys and dollars. Like,
he's a black skinny Santa Claus pimp.
Yeah, pimp in pimp form.
You also mentioned Pam Grier is also in this film, and you were loving Pam Grier.
Yes, because let me ask you this. Unique. When have we seen an older black woman as the like romantic lead? And obviously works because Pam Grier is like the pinnacle of like blaxploitation films. Like, did you even have a real blaxploitation film if Pam Grier was not in it? So of course they're like, well, we have to use Pam Grier for this movie. And she obviously, like, you know, she's not in her prime in this, but she still looks like good as hell. You know, she ages like Angela Bassett and the rest of them. So, but I remember thinking like what show have we seen that has like an older woman like having sex and being desired by Snoop Dogg? And he was really into it. Like, when you go back and watch videos, Snoop Dogg's like, I got to kiss the legend Pam Grier. So it just really made me happy to see a older black woman being, you know, lusted after.
Oh yeah. The other thing that I loved about this film is the world building. And there are some very specific haunting elements. Like, for example, every time the dog, there's a dog in here that's essentially the ghost of Jimmy Bones. But every time the dog eats meat or kills somebody, the flesh of Jimmy Bones's body starts to be corporeal.
What?
Corporeal. So corporeal means of body, where incorporeal refers to not of like the physical body, so spiritual. And so his body, his bones that have been buried underneath the house, ends up becoming like flesh again. I thought that was just a nice little touch.
It was a really nice creature feature, and it kind of reminded me sort of and maybe it was like claymation or stop motion picture. What am I trying to say?
Yeah, claymation, stop motion. Yeah, all of it.
It was like the flesh. You see the flesh sort of growing back in those like early CGI days, because this movie was made in 2001, but it still slapped. I remember watching it and being like, this aged well. Like, this aged well in ways that I know you always talk about. Some of the CGI of our you remember when cartoons went from being like hand drawn to CGI, like think like early Toy Story or the first Incredibles movie, and you go back and watch it and it just doesn't hold up. The storyline holds up obviously, but the animation, you're like, ooh, this is rough. Whereas you can watch Bambi and it's like, oh, this is still just as good, just as vivid. So I really appreciated that they used claymation because it still looked really great.
At one point, the characters go to the underworld, and Amber was like, oh,
this is the upside down.
This is the original upside down. Because
Black people invented the upside down,
yes,
obviously.
There is a concept of the upside down that shows up, and it's very hazy and red, and it has a creepy sort of feature to it. It is very good. It's super
really good. I wouldn't be surprised if like the Duffer Brothers or whatever like saw Bones one night, because it is a cult classic.
Yeah,
like most.
It was panned when it
Jimmy
first
Bones
came out. I think it made
it
half.
Was what?
Panned.
What does that mean?
Yeah, panned means that people didn't like it. It was given low ratings, has a terrible Rotten Tomatoes score, and it didn't make half its budget. I think its budget was $16 million. It made less than $8 million. And so Ernest Dickerson was didn't really make another movie or really didn't do something as big as Bones or Demon Knight ever again. I think Bones was sort of the nail in the coffin for him. But
that was unfortunate because if you go back and look at this, even after years of like we have tons of horror, we have tons of TV, we have tons of streaming sites at this day and age, and I watched Bones and was still like thoroughly entertained.
You know what I realized is that oftentimes the soul of a person's body is really associated with the heart. But in here, when Jimmy Bones starts taking revenge on the people who caused his death or shot and killed him, he saws off their head with his switchblade and then carries around their head. And their soul is contained within their head. So he doesn't let them go to the underworld because he wants each one of them to see him taking revenge on the next person, which I thought was such a nice little touch. I was like, oh, the soul is in the head, right? That makes the most sense because our head created the idea of the soul. So that's another world building element that I thought was, okay, Ernest Dickerson, I see what you're doing. And it was funny.
Yeah, it was hilarious, like the talking heads and like heads will roll. And like, this is kind of like the visual we get for that. But one of my favorite scenes was there's this scene where obviously the guy who's trying to convince Clifton Powell's character is trying to convince Jimmy Bones to sell crack in this neighborhood, and it ends up being a stick up. So they pull their guns out on Bones and they're like, take this crack now, which is all just very like heightened, but it was absurd and jarring. But we are dealing with, you know, the tales of the crack epidemic and
the beginning of it, right? The beginning
of it. And so Jimmy Bones is shot 5 times, and then to add insult to injury, the people that stick him up, this like crooked white cop and this other pimp figure who's turned on him, they make his friends stab him. They're like, well, we're not going to be the only ones responsible for this. So they bring his bodyguard out and make him stab him. And like everybody in the room has to stab him, and obviously gets to Pam Grier, who's like the love of his life, and she goes to stab herself, very like Romeo and Juliet, and then he like stabs himself with that knife, like, no. And I had a moment where I was like, bro, Snoop Dogg is acting. Yeah. Like, he is actually a really great, obviously almost every movie Snoop Dogg is in, he gets to mostly play himself, or he's kind of like who is it? Like a Terrence. What is that actor's name? I don't know why his name is losing me right now. But y'all know Lucius for Empire. Y'all know my heart. But you know, every movie that Wanda Sykes is in, she can kind of basically just play herself. But Snoop Dogg was like playing himself, but also doing like this ghost pimp figure really well. And as he was dying, you know, the blood was, you know, bright red, like brighter than ketchup, like tomato red. But I was thoroughly entertained.
Very much a blaxploitation callback.
Hell yeah.
This is very much loved by that. Also, I mean...
By that? What's that?
By... Wait.
You said this is very much loved by that.
So Ernest Dickerson loves blaxploitation films.
Got it.
He's absolutely...
I thought you were referring to like black people as that.
No,
like, this movie was very much loved by that.
No, this movie, the blacks? The people who created this movie obviously cared and loved blaxploitation films.
Got it.
The 70s.
Thank you for clarifying.
And this is very much a love story, a callback to those blaxploitation films. But something that it's sort of more grotesque and horrific is that here in Chicago, there is a lot of gun violence, and a lot of stories will be someone got shot and walked into the emergency room, or someone got shot and then, they were declared dead at the hospital. And it takes if you get shot, it takes time for you to die, or like it takes time for you to lose blood. And so a lot of films, someone will get shot and immediately die. And this film was like, no, we're going to treat the shooting a little bit realistically.
Yeah.
If someone gets shot, they're lying on the floor for a little bit. It's really horrific. And I thought, even though there is a lot of camp to this, there's elements of realism.
Yes.
That sort of stuck out to me.
But it only got super campy near the end, where it was like tons of maggots and the talking heads. But everything up until that was pretty like, this is a thriller. Yeah.
You know, this movie surprised me because ultimately, if we're going to talk about themes, the themes are about family. And essentially, one of the people who kills Jimmy Bones, we find out his son is the person, his 2 sons are the people trying to buy Jimmy Bones' old home and create this nightclub. And the father is horrified by that because he knows he buried Jimmy Bones' body in that home. And this whole idea of like keeping secrets from your family. Like I was like, oh, this is actually like a family drama. And we learned out the love interest of his son, played by Beyonce's cousin, the one and only
Bianca Lawson. Yes.
Bianca Lawson.
Well, good to see her. You know, she was in Save the Last Dance, and she was kind of the air quote villain there. But if you give it a rewatch as an adult, you're like, oh, you're kind of not the villain.
Yeah, she in Save the Last Dance, she has some valid points. But in this tale, finds out that her father is Jimmy Bones and that he, has been haunting her in a little bit in a very creepy way. So there's lots of family things. It's a family drama. And also there's a blended family here that where the siblings, like the two black brothers and their white sister, very much care for each other and not in like a weird, like, oh, I want to fuck my stepbrother.
She's not trying to be black. There's no sexual tension. You're correct.
Yeah, and she's not trying to, be, what is it, a snow bunny?
A snowflake. Yeah, just like a ditzy white girl.
There is a snowflake in here, though.
Just like, I mean, that's just kind of what he calls her. That's not like a...
Is there an official term? Like, I thought they call them snow bunnies, like white.
White. Yeah. That's just like, that's more of a dig at the black dude. It's like, oh, you only like snow bunnies, huh? Like that. Like a black guy would never be like, hey, my little snow bunny. I don't know. If they did, I wouldn't be in the room for that conversation. But it's
you don't hang out with snow bunnies.
It's mostly just like that's not a thing. It's just like a funny like. Oh, somebody's sleepy. Thanks for bearing with us, y'all. We'll probably wrap up soon just because we have a baby. But no, snow bunnies is not a term for something specific. It's just like, oh, this black guy dates white girls. He likes snow bunnies.
You know what I did like that they sort of explore a more serious theme. And basically this father, he has these two black sons and he explicitly leaves the hood to move into the suburbs, right? Oh,
she said, no, he does not.
She's like, no, we are not leaving the hood, or like this idea of leaving the city, escaping to the suburb. And because his sons like grew up in the suburbs, now they're trying to like get back into the city and they're trying to create rap music, which is a city music. It comes from the city. And the father is so rejecting of that because the father has integrated.
I got you out of here.
Yeah, and he's integrated into white culture. He's
assimilated.
Assimilated into white culture, and so he's married a white woman after his first wife died, which it creates this blended family. And I thought, I was like, oh wow, Ernest Dickerson is exploring something here that is serious, that are real questions that are happening, that there's real tension that happens between middle class black families and their children being too interested in that quote unquote like ghetto lifestyle of like being interested in rap music, being interested in
it's like, and I saved y'all from that. Like
as if you needed to be saved from it. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like you have a white stepmom now. We live in a white neighborhood. Like, why would you aspire to like? Why do you want to be down there with those other blacks and do a nightclub and be into black culture? Like, I saved you from that.
Yeah, I thought it was a very sobering exploration of that and a very caring exploration of that. Another theme that you thought was done dirty is that this idea of vengeful ghosts, right?
Not the done dirty, but I just don't. Okay, so if you watched it with us, you notice that Jimmy Bones kills the bodyguard. So Jimmy Bones had a bodyguard who, I guess, like who had one job, which was to keep him alive, and he didn't do that turned the gun out on. They turned a gun on him, but then of course they made the bodyguard, along with everybody else, stab Jimmy Bones. And so
that they were all culpable. So that they're all culpable,
but I just don't think that the bodyguard deserved to die. I was like, oh no, like he was forced to do that. Like maybe just break his leg or something. But you hit that, like your first kill was the bodyguard who literally had a gun held to his head. And I don't know. Would you have killed the bodyguard?
Well, so here's the thing. Jimmy Bones, and I think Ernest Dickerson is doing, is that Jimmy Bones ghost is separate from Jimmy Bones, the pimp who was caring and loving.
Oh,
good point. And so the ghost that's come back is purely vengeful. And at the closing of the film, Pam Grier's character recognizes that and ends up burning the dress that had the last bit of Jimmy Bones' blood on that. Which in this world, if there's blood in the location, that's why Jimmy Bones is still able to haunt. And so it is understood that this Jimmy Bones coming back, he is not a good dude, right? He is at one point like creepily like haunting his daughter and almost borderline, like you could interpret it sexually. And he is killing a bodyguard who was literally forced to stab him, had a gun to his head. He is doing really terrible, terrible things. And I think we are led to believe that even though we are sympathetic to Jimmy Bones, ultimately he's a vengeful, murdering ghost who has lost all sense of feeling and sympathy.
And he's like, I don't know. I just love how black the ghost is, too. He's like, I remember, nigga, you killed me. Like, feel this. I was just like, yes. Like, you don't have to be like, ooh, I am a white ghost. So I really appreciate it. I also appreciate, spoiler alert, but basically, at the end of the movie, everybody ends up dying. Like, the dad ends up dying.
Jimmy Bones possesses his daughter and then the daughter kills her love interest by vomiting maggots on him.
Yeah, and I was thinking, when have I ever seen everyone die? Like, the perfect storm?
I think in the 90s, 2000s, it was very traditional in horror films to kill everybody. In slasher films, everyone dies, maybe one or two, the final girl trope, but it was very common to kill off everybody. But in this one, it's very clear that there is no final girl. I mean, in a way, there is a final girl. It's Bianca Lawson, but...
Who?
Bianca. What was her name?
Bianca.
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 I said Bianca.
I think you were mixing up Bianca and Beyonce.
Bianca Lawson, Beyonce's cousin, but she is the final girl, but she's being possessed by Jimmy Bones. And I thought, okay, there is so much to unpack here. There's so much to explore. And I mean, I would never try to possess my daughter if I were to try to come back. Like, Jimmy Bones is not a good dude. And it does come back to what you said. He's like, nah,
everybody can get it. Like,
everyone.
The unborn fetus didn't protect me from death either. Yeah, everybody can get it.
Well, I mean, it comes back to this idea is that a pimp is ultimately someone who traffics women. And this idea that selling crack cocaine
ultimately, that is the sole...
That is the sole purpose. And selling crack is, oh, no, that's too low. But you're like, well, also pimping women is also not great, too. you know?
It's like that TikTok. It's like, I am not a thief. I am a shoplifter, okay? Which I like that distinction because it just implies, like, I steal from the grocery store. Like, I'm not just a thief out here.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Ben, if you're watching this on YouTube, whenever we get this out, as you can see, Wild is completely asleep, even though we are loudly broadcasting this right in her ears. She has fallen asleep, and I think that, with that being said, with Wild snoring on my chest, why don't you warp up the show, Ben?
In conclusion, y'all, watch Bones by Ernest Dickerson. This director is incredible. We've covered one of his other movies, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. Watch that as well. He's so fantastic. I'm really glad Snoop Dogg is still acting. He recently came out with a movie with Jamie Foxx. He is an incredible actor. Don't sleep on this film. Pam Grier is awesome. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you so much for watching another episode of the Sci-Fi Sci Podcast. Up next, we will be reading Flowers for the Sea. Ben, can you grab it and hold it right quick in the cameras? We will be reading Flowers for the Sea by Zen, right, Ben?
Zen, yep.
Which is funny because we actually legit just had drinks with Zen last night. By Zen Rockland, who is freaking incredible. I cannot wait to read this book. So be sure to read Flowers for the Sea, and we will see y'all next week for the show. Bye, y'all. Imagine, like, we're probably just so boring that our own child just fell asleep.